So hello, for this next lesson we're going to be covering actually making the board with our Carvey. Now of course, if you have a look at the screen, we'll see that we have the basic board we set up in the last lesson, and we've just changed it a little bit. I've made it look a bit nicer, just moved the components around, and I've modified the components a bit using slightly larger ones. So when you look at the components, they'll have a size. You can just choose the one for the size you need. Again, we're using a simple circuit board, so we want large components. So again, you'll see I've moved it in slightly, and the simple way to check how far you want to move it in, is based on your Carvey, of course. So the Carvey has a little little clamp around here for aligning the board. Now the problem is that Eagle doesn't know the Carvey has this. So if you put it too close to this area here, then it'll drill into itself. So with these, so what you want to do is place the components a little ways in. About here I found works. A bit higher, a little bit further out works. And you are allowed to place your components even up here. And you can even move this board up and down slightly, however you please. So once you have something looking a bit like this, you want to go to your ULP and select PCB G-code from this drop-down menu here. Now, if you don't see this, then you'll need to have another look at the first video and see how you put that there. I'll put a timestamp in the description. So here, we'll see two things. If you drag the name out, we'll see PCB G-code setup and PCB G-code. So we want to use the setup to change our settings. Now you'll see these settings are more or less similar to what we had in the first video, but we changed them around slightly to make them work with our Carvey. So first of all, we want to make sure that all of these boxes are checked. So this is telling it to cut the circuit board, drill the holes, and allow you to do bottom sides. And again, just make sure you're showing the preview so we can see what it will look like, and generate spot drilling the holes. So uncheck the generate milling and text for now because we're not using the text. And you definitely want to make sure we have a single pass. You can use multiple passes if you want, but it just takes much longer. And in my experience, it doesn't really add a whole lot to accuracy. And this just means it'll just pass around each track once rather than going several times. Now the most important, and of course, you're going to want to change your spot drill depth to the height that you need to spot drill. So in this case, our board is about 3.5 millimeters from the wooden part of the Carvey. So we said we wanted to drill to 2.7 millimeters down. Again, we found this works for us, but if you're using slightly different tape or board, you'll need to change this depth, and you can experiment. But I'll start here and then increase and decrease as necessary. Now, the most important parts are your machine setup. So first of all, you have the Z high setting. Now that just says that's for the height when it's moving around your board. So, and before it even starts drilling. So it doesn't spend a lot of time here, and you want to make that quite high so it doesn't hit any clamps or alignment tools or anything on your thing. I found that 30 mil is quite good, but if you're using clamps or using some very high components on your Carvey, you'll need to increase that so it just keeps out of their way. And then you have the Z up. Now the Z up is similar, but it's lower. Oh, sorry. The Z up is similar, but it's just a bit lower. So it's when you're moving around your board, and rather than preparing to drill or finishing drilling. So this shouldn't run into any components. And so I like to set it to about 5 millimeters because again, our board is about 3.5 millimeters high. Now the Z down is where cutting actually happens. So this is how deep the drill should go in order to start cutting. Now, again, my board is about 3.5 millimeters. So this setting it to 3 here makes it cut about 0.5 millimeter into the board, which works quite well for us. Again, you'll need to change this depending on your measurements, and I would measure that, but you can use this as a start point and then change it as necessary. Then you have the drill depth. Now this is different to the spot drill depth, and this is for when it generates the drilling components, then this is the depth we'll go to. Now I like to keep this the same as the spot drill depth, just because I like to drill my holes manually. But if you'd like, you can drill the holes automatically, and you can decrease this to enough to cut through your board. And then you have the drilled well. I found the default here works of 1, and that's just how long the drill should stay at the bottom of the hole to let the hole be finished. The rest of these settings aren't too important, but do make sure you're set to millimetres and not inches. Okay, so once you've finished the machine options, we want to go to the G-code style option set. And all you want to select here is the one that tries to be very compatible. If you can't see that, just drag out the description bar until you do. From there, under G-code options, the only change you want to make is to the extension. We want to make sure that says G-code. If it doesn't, just write it in. Under plugins and other, there's nothing to change. There's only one thing I forgot to mention, and that's under your isolation, under generation options. We found that 0.4mm was quite well, but you can change that up depending on the board you want. The only important thing to remember here is that this is a radius, so the width of your routes will be double this, and your circles, or for your components, they'll be a circle with this radius. So again, just double check the settings with what I've said, but once you're done, you can select accept and make my board. You should see this little menu appear, and just select yes. Now, if you have Java installed, you should see a screen a bit like this. Now, you may get an error message saying you need to install a new version of Java. If you do, just select the More Info button, follow the instructions there, and redo the steps that I've just shown you. Once you have that installed, you should see a screen a bit like this. Now, this is a preview of what our board will look like once it's been cut. Now, you want to do just some checking here, mainly making sure that everything is the correct width, and that nothing's touching. In this case, these may look like they're touching, but the orange bar between the black spots means that it's actually fine, as long as the black spots aren't touching each other. If they are, you may need to reduce your isolation size or use large components. So you can just close that, and then it will show the bottom preview. Now in this case, we have no bottom tracks, so it just has the holes. That's good, that's what we expect. So once that's done, all the G-code will have been generated. If you go back to the equal control panel, under your project you should see a bunch of G-code files. Now the one we care about, because we're cutting out of the top, is something.top.etch.G-code. Now the first part will change depending on your project name, but the important thing is the top.etch.G-code. So once you see that there, we can work on printing out the board. So to do that, all you have to do is go to the easel.inventables.com website, and you'll be prompted to make an account and log in. Now I've already logged in, and once you do that, you will get to this screen. Now there should be some projects here, but I haven't got any yet, so I'll go ahead and make one. Just select new project. So you should see a screen something like this. Now the first thing you should do is select your machine. Now mine's already plugged in, so it knows it's a Carvey. And you always need to make sure you have it set to the correct machine. If you don't select Carvey, you select Carvey for example, it may drill into itself and may cause problems. So always make sure it's set to Carvey before you do anything else. But then you can select import G-code and choose file. Now from here you want to navigate to where you have your G-code, and normally that's stored under documents, eagles, and the name of your project. Now it's the same under Windows and Mac, they both have a documents folder. Now in this case we want to select the name of your project, .top.etch.G-code, and open. And you should see something a bit like this. So we want to do some checking here, making sure that none of these lines are crossing into this alignment L here. You can see none of the lines are touching it, that means it's good. If they are touching it, the simplest way to solve that is just to move your components up and to the right slightly under eagle, and then regenerate the G-code. So if you'd like, we can preview this, and you see how it will cut, and this is looking about right to me. So I'm going to go ahead and select carve. Now there'll be some buttons here, just double check everything's right. In our case we're not using clamps, we're using double-sided tape, so we can ignore those. And once we're done we can select carve. Now if you're on Windows, you may need to install it may ask you to install some drivers. Just follow the instructions. And you may have some issues connecting. I found that if you're having issues connecting, it's often easiest just to restart your computer, and it tends to work. Now first of all, it's going to calibrate itself. So once it's calibrated, it spins up and moves over to where you're cutting. Now like I said, I've made it cut in quite a fair ways, and to make it work on a carver you need to do that. But if you'd like, you can always move your PCB to make it cut slightly closer. So you can see it's cutting out our components and our pieces and our routes, and everything's nicely isolated. Then you can change the size of this, you can change the components, all of this is up to you. And here, once it's done, it just spot drills our holes. So if we'd like, we can change the drilling settings to make this drill it the whole way through, or we can change the drill bit for it, or we can use we can do it manually, we can use a drill press or whatever we'd like to do it ourselves. So once it's complete, you'll see this, and on your screen it should ask you how to turn out, and hopefully it looks great. So you can select that option. Now, if things didn't go to plan, you'll probably need to change the G-code options. So something that may happen, it may drill too far, in which case all you need to do is change your Z down settings. Or it may not drill down far enough. Again, just change your Z down settings. Now, like I said, once you've got those settings right, it's probably going to work out fine, and you can keep those for a while. Now, but you will need to change them occasionally, depending on things like weather. We found that on cold days, the boards bow slightly as the copper contracts, so we've needed to change our settings slightly for these cold days. So you need to calibrate occasionally, and you probably need to do several test boards to make it work correctly. So that's about it.